Hello, thank you for listening. This video is an analysis of the proposed Foxwalks Solar Farm in Bromsgrove. To be clear, this development is an industrial development. It's on a greenfield site on greenbelt land. And greenbelt industrial developments are only permitted under exceptional circumstances. If we look at Bromsgrove District Council's analysis of its greenbelt, the proposed development is in strategic parcel W1, which strongly assists in the safeguarding of the countryside from encroachment. And the council also recognises that the historic environment is an important consideration with regard to potential developments in the greenbelt. So let's look at the historic environment. Well, the proposed site sits in the middle of the Grafton Manor estate, which is an historic area of Bromsgrove, and it was owned by the Earl of Shrewsbury, and this is his map from 150 years ago in the 19th century. And the three fields which are proposed, which are arrowed on the map, sit right in the middle of the estate, and they're surrounded by East Lodge, West Lodge and Warridge Lodge farms, which are all of similar architectural type, and they sit on the high ground surrounding the relatively lower ground in the middle of the estate. And of course the ancient Grafton Manor sits right in the middle. So Bromsgrove District Council did an historic environment assessment, and what they found was that the area where the proposed development is of high amenity potential. It's one of the two highest areas within Bromsgrove, so why would you allow a development to take place here? The other piece of history that you need to know about is the gunpowder plot. So Robert Winter, his father-in-law, owned Grafton Manor. His younger brother, Thomas Winter, was not quite as rich as Robert, but actually he owned Timberhonger Farm, which is in Timberhonger Lane, Bromsgrove. And actually Timberhonger Farm can be seen from Grafton Manor and vice versa. So this plot is linked in the landscape where the development is proposed to take place. This is an estate map of Grafton Manor dated 1700 that sits in the archive of the Duke of Norfolk, and it shows this earth dam which was built to hold the fish pond at Grafton Manor. And this is a more modern view of it. This is a radar map, a LiDAR map from the Department of the Environment. Now, the dam has Grafton Lane running across the top of it, and this is a construction access for the proposed project. The problem is that the dam is in pretty terrible condition. It's eroded and it's full of tree roots. And if you look at this picture from the Environment Agency, this is what a really bad dam looks like, but the Grafton Dam looks even worse. And it's riddled with dead tree stumps, animal burrows, and there's seepage and reeds next to the dam. And for some reason, the developers in the planning application have not recognised that this is a potential hazard. Coming back to the recreational use of the greenbelt, Bromsgrove Council is on record as saying that they aim to encourage people to get more active and enjoy their local open spaces in a bid to help our residents feel better, stay connected and live full and healthy lives. So who uses the greenbelt? Well, this is National Cycleway 46, and the cycleway goes along Timbonga Lane to Berry Lane, and the cycleway is very widely used, thousands of people every month, and this is a cycle event that's taking place at the weekend in aid of Birmingham Hospice. Now, when the cyclists cycle down Timbonga Lane from multiple spots, they will be able to see this development. And at the corner near to Timbonga Farm, it will be very clearly in view. And the point about the development is that it's at the bottom of the valley. So no matter what screening is put around the development, even if the hedge grows for 50 years, you will still be able to see it from the National Cycleway. Just consider local people walking and horse riders. Now, the brochure that was put out by Spring is totally dishonest about what this solar farm will actually look like. A much more realistic assessment of it comes from this document, which was prepared by the Building Research Establishment for Cornwall County Council. And this shows the likely appearance of this type of solar farm, with rows of panels surrounded by closed welded mesh panel fencing. And this will be particularly intrusive for anyone who walks down the ancient bridleway between Warridge Lodge and Foxwalks Farm, which goes slap through the middle of Field 3 of the development. Now, as the walkers go along the bridleway, they will be able to see the CCTV surveillance cameras that will undoubtedly be fitted to the development. The surveillance cameras allegedly will not be able to look outside the development, but there's absolutely no control about whether that will be real. And so local people from Bromsgrove will be subject to CCTV surveillance, facial recognition, all that type of stuff. And this is a real problem. So here we have an official government report from the Biometrics and Surveillance Camera Commissioner that says that this type of surveillance camera is shot through with Chinese surveillance technology. And we just don't think that the population of Bromsgrove should be subjected to this type of thing. Now, the development is taking place on agricultural land, and this raises the issue of food security. So this is the UK Food Security Report for 2021, and it shows a pretty depressing picture that in the early 1980s we produced almost 80% of our food, but that has now fallen to only 60%. The applicants will say that the agricultural land is of low value and low quality. However, this is simply not the case. The satellite data shows that the vegetation on the land where the solar panels are planned to go is very active. It's high quality, productive agricultural land. Now, the other problem with agricultural land, it's not only a matter of food security, it's a matter of carbon fixation. So if the land is grassland, which is managed in a conventional way, then the grass over a period of years will fix carbon. And that's why the path over your lawn at home will look as if it is sinking compared to the grass, but actually it's the grass that's growing. So either it's poor quality land, in which case carbon fixation is an issue, or it's good quality land, in which case food security is an issue. the other issue is soil destruction. Now, the leaflet produced by spring is again completely dishonest about this issue. It shows vegetation growing underneath these solar panels with cheerful looking wild flowers in the vegetation. This is an official publication of the Welsh Government on the soil impact of solar voltaic panels on agricultural soils. And what it shows is that underneath the solar panels, the grass is dead. And so the issues are dead vegetation under the panels, soil erosion from runoff water, soil compaction during construction, and also during changing the panels during the life of the development, and then soil disturbance from the trenching, and further damage from the activities at the removal of the panels. Now, it is possible that solar panels on some circumstances will improve agriculture, and the shading of the panels helps by preventing excessive heating and evaporation of water, but they help in hot and arid climates such as Arizona or southern Spain. The issue, of course, with Bromsgrove is that it is neither hot nor arid. Because of the concerns about loss of agricultural land, this development would be illegal in Japan, because in Japan you have to preserve 80% of the agricultural production, and that certainly won't happen in Foxwalks. In France, you have to deliver an enhancement to the agricultural land, and again, that will not be happening at Foxwalks. So make no mistake, there will be a permanent destruction of the agricultural land, and that is partly happening because of the choices that the applicant has made in the design of the development. So if we look at the European Commission's solar model at the Bromsgrove location, if the solar panels are at 50 degrees, they will produce a certain amount of electricity during the year. And 50 degrees is the optimum angle for maximum electricity production at a latitude of 52 degrees. But what the applicant has chosen to do is to have the solar panels at 20 degrees to the horizontal. And the effect of this is that the annual production of electricity is reduced, and in particular it reduces the electricity that is produced in the depths of the winter, which is exactly when you need the electricity. So why have they done this? Well, the clue is in this analysis from the University of Ottawa in Canada. And in Canada, they know about doing things in the far north. So what they've done is they've flattened the panels to 20 degrees. This reduces the amount of shadowing of the panels when the sun is low in the sky, and it increases the ground coverage ratio. That's the number of panels that you can put on the land. So this means that what they're doing is they're prioritizing the output of electricity per hectare rather than the output per panel. And the reason for that is that the panels are cheap and the agricultural land is expensive, and they simply don't care about the dead soil underneath the panels. So what are the alternatives to solar photovoltaics? Because we need to establish that this is essential to happen in this particular bit of greenbelt land. So the obvious alternative is wind. Now, the United Kingdom has the best wind resources of any advanced country. We have huge amounts of it. And so in 22-23, wind was second only to gas, 78 terawatt hours per year. Solar was less than 1/6 of this. It's virtually insignificant compared to wind. The Hornsea 3 wind farm is the largest offshore wind farm in the world, bar none. In Scotland, they're developing floating wind farms. The newest floating wind farm in Scotland will be the largest anywhere in the world. And the point about the wind farms is that they produce more energy in the winter, which is exactly when you need it. So at the moment, the UK uses much more electricity in the winter than in the summer. And this differential is going to increase in coming years as more heat pumps are used for domestic heating in the winter. So what are the alternatives to putting solar in Bromsgrove? Well, one idea which sounds mad at first is to put it in Morocco. So if you look at the yearly production of electricity in Bromsgrove, and you look at the general pattern of it month by month, and then you look at the same installation at an optimized angle in Morocco, and straight away you double the electricity output. And more importantly, the electricity output is as large in January, pretty well, as it is in July. And the reason for that is the simple fact of astronomy that the sun is higher in the sky in the winter in Morocco than it is in Bromsgrove. So the plan from the X-Links project, which is backed by Octopus Energy, is to have massive solar farms in Morocco and to have a 4,000 kilometre interlinking cable to bring the electricity direct to the UK. So this is a massive project, and it's supported at the moment by Octopus, by Total Energy, the French company, and the Abu Dhabi National Energy Company. Now, you may think that it's mad to have a 4,000 kilometre cable, but actually the UK is already supplied with electricity by this cable from Norway, which is already the best part of 1,000 kilometres long. So what happens is that if wind farms in the UK are not producing sufficient electricity, we can import hydroelectricity from Norway. And if the wind is blowing nicely in the UK, we export the electricity to Norway and use it to pump the water back into the Norwegian reservoirs. And in Norway, there's an astronomical amount of hydro storage, a total of 5 terawatt hours. So this is already happening, and it's pretty significant. In the application that's been made to Bromsgrove District Council, there is a clear failure to account for the full carbon cost of the development. There is an upstream cost for manufacturing the panels and the construction of the solar farm, and there's also a downstream cost from dismantling and recycling. So the energy cost of manufacturing the panels is enormous because the silicon has to be melted in this type of furnace. And at the end of the life of the panels, there's a huge cost for recycling them. Incidentally, in the UK right now, there is no credible method of recycling solar panels. This is simply a hope for the future. But the problem is that the solar trash wave is going to hit us actually rather faster than people think. So this is from the Harvard Business Review, and what they've pointed out is that it will be highly unusual for the same panels to be in the same solar farm for a period of 40 years. They're much more likely to be replaced during the lifetime of the development. So this analysis is from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory in the United States, and what it shows is that the total life cycle carbon use of photovoltaic is approximately 3 times the same figure for wind power. And there's a very similar analysis that's come from the European Union, which shows pretty much the same thing. And in the good old UK, the Houses of Parliament, Parliamentary Office of Science and Technology, have shown exactly the same thing. Forced labour. This is a clear issue for solar panels. This publication by Sheffield Hallam University is about the use of forced labour by Uyghur Muslims in Western China. And here they are manually crushing silicon in Western China. And here is a materials industrial park in China. And here is a satellite image of the double perimeter fence and wall and internal fenced areas in a Uyghur Muslim internment camp in China. Now, you may think this is just an abstract concept. It really doesn't matter in Bromsgrove because it's a long way away. But the Modern Slavery Act has to be abided by. And this is Scottish Water's modern slavery statement for the year 22-23. And Scottish Water is a respectable public sector body. And what Scottish Water have decided is that elements of the panels that Scottish Water are purchasing are, or have a very high probability of being, produced by forced labour in Western China. This is a letter by Alicia Cairns MP to the Secretary of State for Energy. And what the MP is pointing out is that the US Uyghur Forced Labour Prevention Act and incoming EU regulations are leaving the UK as an outlier, lacking any meaningful deterrent or regulation. And we are fast becoming a dumping ground for solar products made by Uyghur slaves. This is not some lunatic theory that I've found on Facebook or TikTok. This is the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. Dishonest and criminal behaviour. We know that the submission by Spring is fundamentally dishonest. You only have to look at this picture. The problem that we have is that Spring will not be the ultimate owner of this development. We don't know who the owner will be, and we have absolutely no idea whether they will have the funds to clear up the mess at the end of the development. And unless there is a cast iron insurance-backed bond right at the start of the development, there is no guarantee that the mess will be cleaned up. If this development was happening in Italy, then the natural assumption would be that it was being done by the mafia. So the business model is pretty simple. You take a suitcase full of money that you've got by drug dealing or some similar activity, and you hand it over and you get some solar panels, and you persuade a farmer to put them up in a field, and you collect the money from the electricity company. So it's a method of turning dirty money into clean money. Now, you may think that this is just something that might happen with the mafia in Italy, but of course it happens in the UK, and Thurrock Council are now infamous for having invested millions and millions of pounds in solar farms. And the trouble is that they were deluded into spending money on developments that were simply not viable. And they had to be rescued by the Secretary of State, bailed out by loans from the Department of Levelling Up. Now, you may think this is just something that happened in Essex and it couldn't possibly affect us here in Worcestershire, but this analysis from the Local Government Chronicle on the scale of Thurrock's borrowing from other councils makes it clear that they were loaned £27 million by Worcestershire County Council. So council taxpayers in Bromsgrove were on the hook for this completely crooked and dishonest solar development in Thurrock. Alternative locations for the solar panels. So the analysis produced by the proposer completely fails to appreciate that rooftop solar is an appropriate alternative to putting it on a greenfield site. So this analysis from the UK Warehouse Association shows that rooftop solar on warehouses is an impressively large resource. And you only have to look around you. Here we are in Hampton Lovett, in Droitwich, huge areas of warehouse, in Aston Fields in Bromsgrove, and also at Harris Brush, where there is incidentally also a rather large brownfield site. And even more locally, at Foxwalks Farm, on the farm buildings at the moment, there are no solar panels. Now, it's possible to put solar panels, according to Historic England, even on historic buildings. This is the UK Energy Brief for 2023, published by the Department of Energy Security. And what it makes clear is that small-scale solar is actually a very large resource. And of the 13 gigawatts total capacity for solar, 6 of it is small scale. So the large solar developments on greenfield sites are only half of the solar capacity of the UK. The chart makes it clear that small-scale wind is not really a viable proposition. And the reason for that is that a small solar panel is just as efficient as a large solar panel. But a large windmill is a hell of a lot more efficient than a small windmill. But individual private investors can purchase shares in large wind farms. And this is the Whitelaw Bray wind farm on the top of a substantial hill in Scotland, and that is open to individual householders to invest in and get your electricity from a wind farm in the winter when you need it. This analysis from the UK Warehouse Association makes it pretty clear that in the summer, generation will consistently meet the demands of the warehouse, but also generate large exports. And this is one of the problems with solar, that it produces a vast overproduction of energy in the middle of the day in the summer, and it doesn't produce it in the middle of the night in the winter when you really need it. So the excess production will be exported, and it will be exported into the European carbon trading market. And in practice, this means that it will probably go to Germany, because in Germany they have a large requirement for electricity for all their factories, but they don't have anything like the wind resources that we have in the UK, and they don't have the nuclear resources which are available in France. So what you have to make your mind up is, do you really want to cover these beautiful green fields in Bromsgrove with solar panels in order to provide the electricity to run the production line in a BMW car plant? Just think about it, and thank you for listening.